And the project I'm going to talk about today is collaborative work with Helen, Taha here at the OII, and a collaborator in Peter John at UCL, and particularly looking at petitions online, how they grow, which succeed, which don't, and the reasons, mechanisms behind this. The sort of motivation coming out of this was that often social movements in general, petitions in particular, were studied sort of post hoc, looking back, what were the successful petitions, and those are the ones that were often studied, and being a post hoc sort of methodology, after the fact, a lot of data about what people thought or remembered happening, what they remember being the significant shifts in the movement, in the petition. And we saw online platforms as a new opportunity to look at some of these elements in a sort of large-scale, non-invasive way. We have data coming from 3 different platforms, 2 in the UK, the earlier number 10 government site, a later version, current version of was direct.gov, now gov.uk, and from the US, We the People petition. Just since I only have 10 minutes, I'm going to give you some very high-level findings about this. And the first one is that most petitions fail. Even on the first number 10 site, you only need to have 500 signatures for a petition to succeed to get an official response. You think, come on, 500 signatures? I could get my mates to go sign this thing, right? And I should be able to get close. And 95% of the petitions launched on the site fail to get even 95 signatures. We have a bit of a messy graph here, but basically looking at color, the green ones are the ones that go on to get 500, number of days active, number of signatures over time on the vertical axis. Red, the ones that never make it to 500, despite being active usually for about a year at a time. All right, this petition platform went away. They relaunched in the new format on gov.uk, and you need 100,000 signatures to get a petition. To get an official response, to have a parliamentary debate, 100,000 signatures, about 10,000 you get an official response now. Still, about 95% of the petitions never get past 500 to 1,000, that's about 1-2%. 10,000, you're at about 0.5%. At 100,000, you're about 0.1% of the petitions launched. What's interesting about that 0.1%, and these light yellow lines here over time, is that by far the majority of them that do succeed to get 100,000 do so very quickly. With the time axis here along the bottom, these yellow lines, and most of their growth is happening right on the left side, shortly after launch. In fact, on average, to get 100,000 signatures overall, they had at least 3,000 signatures 3,000 signatures in their first 10 hours being live on the site. So 100,000 signatures, yes, but they were already distinguishing themselves in their first 10 hours. They needed to have at least 3,000 signatures on average. We built a sort of multiplicative model around this, saying, right, for every signature, every person that signs, let's consider them to bring an X number of additional signatures with them. So after I sign, I can go advertise this to my friends, and some portion of my friends and mates may take up the cause and sign after me. And so averaging over all of the signatures, we then calculate how that, what a factor on that multiplicative variable declines over time. And so at the beginning, it's sort of, hey, everyone is signing in, and as we go on in time, the number of people that each signature brings, the number of additional people that each single signature brings, decreases over time, and it decreases extremely quickly. Here's about 10 hours. I was saying that mark where you really need to sort of distinguish yourself as a successful petition in those first 10 hours. And really after about a day, petitions have kind of settled into their final bin, and we can really just about predict what their final signature count will be. And so it's really quick dynamics. Very similar results observed for lots of news websites, so sites like Reddit, and how long a story spends on the front page, or what proportion make it there. Other sorts of sites that have very quick turnaround, very dynamic. quick factors look very similar. And that occurs on both the US and the UK side. So most petitions fail. Those that succeed do so very quickly. And collective attention across all petitions on the site decays very quickly. Fourth big level finding, design really matters. Partway through our data collection in the UK side, they redesigned the site. They introduced a trending facility. They listed the top 6 petitions on the homepage and said, right, these are the 6 petitions that got the most signatures in the last hour. So it's a very volatile list. It changes very quickly. As we were collecting the data, it broke my code, but I rewrote the code so we could continue getting signatures. And before and after that introduction, we see about the same number of signatures per day happening. So the site's attracting a similar number of traffic, similar number of people signing petitions before and after the introduction. But the petitions they sign has changed significantly. And here we're measuring with the Gini coefficient, so a measure of inequality, used a lot for sort of income distribution within a country. So the level of inequality has significantly risen after this trending facility. And this is quite surprising, actually, because it suggests that there are people coming to the site not just to sign a specific petition, but to look for something to sign, right? So they're coming and they're going, gee, I might sign something. They're looking at the trending petitions, and the ones that are trending are getting more signatures. The rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer on this site. And so design is having a real effect here, and in a way we might not necessarily have expected. Last big level finding, mapping out how those petitions change as a percentage of daily change in signatures. We get what sort of actually emerged in politics is a bit of a classic curve here, but we have a small number of a small number of very large changes off over here, and a very large number of small changes clustered right around 0. These are centered around the mean of the petition there. And this is something similar that's been observed in policy cycles. So a big issue will get a lot of attention, institutions are made, policies are changed, and then that happens very quickly, and then there's a period of sort of stasis where things don't change very much, very small incremental changes. And the petitions are reflecting a similar sort of dynamic here. And so whether they're feeding off the political cycle in that way, or they're contributing back to some of this instability where there's lots of small changes and a few big punctuated changes in the status quo is a point of further research. So what are we doing with this? In my last minute and a half left here is some outcomes have come out. We've published articles. It's forming a core part of a monograph book that will be coming out on collective action, labeled Chaotic Pluralism, Social Media, and Collective Action. We've been covered in the BBC, and like all good academics, we have more money to do more things going on. So we have a year-long grant starting in January to continue doing some of this work. In particular, we've been collecting some data that we haven't yet been able to really fully analyze. And we want to be able to look at the geographic distribution of signatures. This is a very quick sketch of all signatures on the map. It kind of looks like the UK population at this moment. It'll be need to be normalized by internet penetration, population. We have it per petition, and we have zip code data in the US as well. And so we can start to investigate are there national or regional petitions. Are there rural or urban divides among these petition sets? And we're going to rope in some of the geography expertise in this department to collaborate on this project. We have been tracking links to petitions in social media and Twitter in particular. And so we can reconstruct how links to petitions are diffusing over the network. And this sort of viral spread is actually really, really rare in social networks. There's a lot of broadcasts. Someone very popular sends it to lots of followers. Sort of where it happens a few people at a time is something relatively rare, but a recent paper, still actually a preprint of a paper, has suggested that petitions are among the most viral content that is out there. And so we're excited to be able to delve more into that aspect And finally, looking at some additional platforms, more general platforms that aren't under the government remit, something like change.org, elevating this up to a cross-national level, looking at some of the European citizens initiative drives and things like that. Also hoping to collaborate with an NGO and actually try out some of these things and do some natural experiments in the field. So that's my very quick summary on that one project, and look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Do you think this was a good starting point to then go on to look at the effect of the internet and other forms of civil action? So, you know, all the BBM, and we were talking about it, Hale and I were talking about it earlier, but all the BlackBerry stuff that was feeding the Arab states uprisings. I mean, do you think this will form a base for some extension into that?
I think it does, and I think the way that the public shifts and how attention shifts from one issue to another, that we can see through some of these petitions, would be something similar, where we can see support galvanizing around particular issues, even if not in an explicit petition form, then as a topic emerging for discussion around a larger group of people. We've also taken some of this into the lab, and we've done controlled experiments where we can vary the social information that's available to people, the visibility of their actions, or not, and we can investigate some of the specific mechanics that lie behind this, which again contribute back, I think, to some of the wider social movement literature. Yes?
I'm interested, going back to Vili's talk, have you had any evidence of virtual markets in petition signatures, like for Twitter followers?
I have not yet, but it's a very good question. I think it's something that I think the geographic data may tell us a little bit about. It's all anonymized data at the moment, so we don't have the names of people that link one signature from another. We do have their postcode or their zip code, and I'm looking to see maybe if we find sort of bunches in places that don't correspond with the geographic distribution of people, and if we might find hints of sort of people gaming the system or not. I don't know if the data will be there, if it's rich enough to find that out, but it's a very intriguing question. Yeah.
Maybe up the same path, but further, have you thought about what the implications of this are for, flash mobs, at the kind of easy end to social protests in places like Egypt, where the use of online communication was very important to people's physical arriving someplace.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, can you stretch it that far? I wonder if the same shapes emerge.
Yeah, I think there are related aspects. I mean, obviously there are a number of other motivators that drive people ultimately into the street to take an action, but certainly part of that is their belief that they're not going to be the only person showing up to that square, and that there's enough support that this is a popular enough movement, and the online environments give those signals.
That's why I asked. So that flash mobs of one are embarrassing.
Absolutely.
Flash mobs in Tahrir Square are dangerous.
Are dangerous if you're one.
Yeah. Exactly.
So there's more work to do to link these things together, but in the lab side of things, where we've varied the amount of social information, we found strong links between the information available and also interacting that with the individual's personality, and how personality traits trigger how much sort of support you need to see before you're ready to make a commitment. Yeah, and Helen maybe can add in more.
One thing there, in answer to both of your questions, I mean, the idea behind a lot of this was very much kind of the Arab Spring. I mean, at the time of the I'm a political scientist. At the time of the financial crisis, we used to enjoy sort of laughing at economists and saying, "Ha ha, well, you didn't see that coming, did you?" But of course, when it came to the Arab Spring, it was completely on us. Nobody saw it coming, particularly not us. And I would argue that the reason we didn't see it coming is partly because political science as a discipline has conspicuously failed to look at any of this stuff, and that's the gap. So very much the idea behind the book, it was, here's the Arab Spring, where the social media are heavily fingered in this, exactly what was going on social media, and what does it tell us more generally, and how might it help us to predict, because there's no doubt that you know, just simple little things like clicking like on a website, like the Real Carlo Say website. Okay, that's a little thing when there's 500,000 people who've done it, but it's a big thing when hardly anyone has done it, and your anonymity is not guaranteed. So, you know, how do the dynamics of the growth of those kinds of things work, and what can they tell us about what's going to happen in the future? Is very much part of the idea behind it.
I would have thought there's a device angle too, which would be important. Well, there's the big screens, medium-sized screens, little screens with different levels of portability might affect it. Because this one, you know, we're sitting next to each other. There's a human interaction and a media interaction happening at the same time.
Absolutely, absolutely, and a lot of these.
If that helps
did
build
take place on
coalitions so that
place.
people actually turn up.
Yeah.
Have you drawn any
Absolutely.
conclusions on subject matter, you know, what topics it is that get people out of bed to do this?
Something that bears more investigation still. I do have a quick list of some of the top petitions on there, but what's interesting, some of them are fun to laugh at, some of them are interesting. What's interesting is that actually, say in the case of, say, Stop the Badger Call, there were 3 separate attempts at starting this petition, and 2 of them plateaued out right under 1,000 signatures or so. One of them made it quite large, and they were launched at different times by different people. And so certainly the topic is part of it, but it's also the environment and the timing of its launch, and it's who's launched it. And I think it's something that we can dig more into with the social media data, and we can see how these things are actually spreading, who's advocating them across the different platforms.
Do you have an example of the US ones as well to show what they?
I didn't put them in the slide deck.
We can give them to
Yes.
you.
Yeah.
We've got the top 10.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
actually,
do
the
actually have
Badgers,
them.
the BBC, when they covered this, they asked us to give them 3 petitions, one very successful, one medium, and one completely bombing out. And I said they should all be the same topic to show that it wasn't the topic that was determining them. And I think Taha said, "Oh, we can't. That would be really difficult." I said, "Really, no, it's easy, you know, because there are actually lots of the same topic. And of course, being the UK, the one to go to is the one that's got a picture of a cute badger. Some cute animal.
It makes good media.
So it was really easy to find one with the 3 examples, same topic.
Thanks again, Scott.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I can-